Indiana Queen with Last Night I Had a Dream. That's off of the 2020 release, This I Do Carry Unto the End. You are listening to Lavender Hill here on KZUM Lincoln, KZUM HD 89.3 on the FM and online at kzum.org. Perhaps you're using one of those handy-dandy smarter than a calculator devices and listening to the show on your favorite mobile listening app like TuneIn or Next Radio. Or you could be listening up to 2 weeks after original broadcast date thanks to the KZUM archives, which can be found on the interwebs at kzum.org/archives. However it is that you're listening, I'm glad that you're here, and thank you to each and every one of you who sent positive thoughts, prayers, good juju, whatever it was that you did to help me get through my gallbladder surgery a couple of weeks ago. Sorry I wasn't here live in the studio for you last week, but I do hope you enjoyed that show that I put together for you. Today, we're live and thriving, so let's see what we can do for you. All right, I got some music, of course, lined up for you and a few news stories here and there, but I wanted to remind you what tomorrow is. Tomorrow, Monday, the 17th of January, is Martin Luther King Jr. Day, the day that we remember one of the great civil rights activists of the last century and the legacy that he has left behind. Though we do have a long struggle yet to go before we have obtained equal rights across the board here in the United States, we have made some great strides. But I'm not going to focus on those great strides. I just want to remind you that tomorrow, of any day out of the year, tomorrow is a day to think about, remember, and do something to help that struggle for equality, whether it be racial rights, whether it be LGBTQIA2S SOGI issues, whether it be women's rights, whether it be immigration or anything that you feel needs to be fought for. Do something to make that a little bit more present in your mind tomorrow. Bayard Rustin was one of the advisors to Martin Luther King Jr. He was not just a civil rights activist. He was one of the early gay pioneers, especially within the African American or black community, to push for equal rights, not just for racial equality, but for LGBTQIA2S SOGI issues. So think of him as well and the legacy that he has left behind. All right, well, like I said, that's pretty much all I'm going to talk about when it comes to MLK Jr. Day, other than, it's also the birthday of the late, great Betty White. So be more Betty tomorrow as well. Maybe make a donation to one of the no-kill animal shelters or something along those lines. Just be a little bit more Betty while you're honoring her and Martin Luther King Jr. tomorrow. All righty. Well, the Washington Blade has a little bit of an article about the D.C. MLK Day Peace Walk. It's a little confusingly worded because of the impending weather that was coming their way when it was published 2 days ago on the 14th by Lou Chabarro Jr., but it is talking about the LGBTQ contingent to join the Peace Walk. Not sure what the weather actually turned out to be. One of my artist friends, musicians online, Arthur Hines, lives and works in the general vicinity. General vicinity. And he had a little bit of a struggle getting to work this morning. So I'm not entirely sure if that walk went off without a hitch or if it just kind of slid on by thanks to that freak ice storm hitting that part of the country. But that doesn't mean that you can't think about civil rights and participate in some way or another. But yeah, I'll post the article to the Facebook page for Lavender Hill. It's not really as pertinent now as it was when I first came across it because of the weather. But let's move right on ahead to something that is some good news as well. This is from Thursday, January 13th, 2022. Molly Sprayregan, writing for the LGBTQnation.com website. The headline under politics reads, Biden administration to officially recognize trans and non-binary veterans' genders. Yes, you heard that right. The Biden administration is now allowing trans and non-binary veterans to identify as such on their medical records. On Wednesday of this last week, the Department of Veterans Affairs announced that gender selections on paperwork will now include the options of transgender female, transgender male, non-binary, and other. Patients can also indicate a preferred name to be used on their medical records. To quote the Veteran Affairs Secretary Dennis McDonough, all veterans, all people, have a basic right to be identified as they define themselves. This is essential for their general well-being and overall health. Knowing the gender identity of transgender and gender-diverse veterans helps us better serve them. McDonough has had a strong focus on making the VA more LGBTQ inclusive. After taking office in February of last year, he created a task force devoted to doing so. The task force has offered 88 recommendations for changes, which the VA said will take 4 years to implement. We recognize this work requires a cultural shift and will not happen overnight, but the Biden-Harris administration and I will see this through to completion, McDonough said. While McDonough's moves have been applauded by trans veterans and activists, some are growing frustrated with their slow implementation. In June, for example, he announced that the VA would begin covering gender confirmation surgery, but due to drawn-out bureaucratic processes, it could be 2 years before that actually happens. When they talk about, well, we need to do an economic impact study and really figure out the logistics, that seems a little disingenuous because that's already been done, Hannah Tripp, a transgender Air Force veteran, told Military.com. It's really hard to emphasize, how close in 2016 this rule was to being implemented. If Hillary Clinton got elected, it would have been implemented that year. The updates to the medical records, however, appear to have already been implemented. Beyond that, the Biden administration has made several moves to protect the rights and dignity of trans veterans as well as active members of the military. Before Biden even took office last year, he appointed transgender veteran Sean Skelly to his transition team, and in January, he overturned the Trump-era transgender military ban. In April, he also appointed Skelly to be Assistant Secretary of Readiness in the Department of Defense. When McDonough announced the eventual coverage of gender confirmation surgery, he said it was President Joe Biden who ultimately made the choice to add it. It's the president's decision, and we've just announced today that we're executing that decision. That decision will carry out now over many, many months, but at the end of the day, this is the president's authority to do, McDonough said. He's made clear it's time to do it, and that's precisely what we'll do. That's pretty much the entire article there for you from LGBTQnation.com. I will include a link to that as well to the Lavender Hill Facebook page so you can read it and follow the links that are embedded in it for more information. Now, as I always recommend and suggest that you do. All righty, well, let's go ahead and take a bit of a music break here, and we're going to have a good old standard, an anthem of the gay rights movement, if you will. You all will recognize the song, and I'm sure many of you still love it today. Gloria Gaynor with I Will Survive. This is the dance remix. Gloria Gaynor with I Will Survive, and you are listening to Lavender Hill here on KZUM Lincoln, KZUM HD, 89.3 on the FM and online at kzum.org. Going to continue on after I give a brief shout out to the listeners across the country. Wow, literally coast to coast. We got the Atlantic side of Florida all the way across to the West Coast, and we've got our neighbors up north in Montreal listening as far south as Tucson, Arizona. At least those are the ones that are popping up on my listener map, which is just those of you who are listening via the website. If you're using one of those mobile listening apps, you're not unfortunately showing up for me. So give me a little poke there on Facebook and let me know where you're listening from. It'd be great to hear from you. But now for some not so great coverage for you. Yeah, this is, again, from LGBTQnation.com. That's where I'm referring to for the most part today. And this is from yesterday, January 15th, Saturday, of course, 2022. Alex Bollinger writing. Headline under the news heading reads, Gay activist who helped win marriage equality in Florida found dead in landfill. Ooh. Florida LGBTQ activist Jorge Diaz-Johnston, who was a plaintiff in a historic marriage case, has been found dead at the age of 54 in a landfill in Jackson County. Diaz-Johnston went missing on January 3rd, and his body was found face down in a trash pile on the morning of Saturday, January 8th. Tallahassee police have ruled his death a homicide, and they say they suspect foul play. Homicide would be foul play, but okay, Alex, I understand this is a difficult thing to cover sometimes. In July 2014, a judge in Miami-Dade County declared the state's ban on marriage equality unconstitutional in an historic ruling. Diaz-Johnston and Don Price Johnston, the Miami lawyer he would later marry, were plaintiffs in that case that Equality Florida helped bring. The judge ordered Miami-Dade County to allow same-sex couples to marry a year before the Supreme Court legalized marriage equality in all 50 states. He touched so many people with his kind and generous heart, Johnston wrote on Facebook. I can't stop crying. Diaz-Johnston's brother, former Miami Mayor Manny Diaz, a Democrat, said in a statement, My brother was such a special gift to this world whose heart and legacy will continue to live on for generations to come. Community leaders remember Diaz-Johnston as someone who helped others when they needed it. Whenever there was help needed in the community, he came out to lend a helping hand, said Orlando Gonzalez of the LGBTQ organization Safeguarding American Values for Everyone Foundation. Tallahassee police want anyone with information about the homicide to call. And since we do have some Florida listeners, I'm going to give the number. That's 1-850-891-4200. They have not released any details of the ongoing investigation, which of course they wouldn't do. Anybody who knows anything about investigations knows that they're not really going to give any details. So if you do have information and you're in the area, or even if you're not in the area and have information due to social media, call 1-850-891-4200. Ooh. Never really like covering stories like that. But, you know, it's news that needs to get out there, and people need to be aware that it's still happening. Circumstances are beyond our knowledge at this point in time. I don't know if the Miami-Dade or Tallahassee Police Department know any other information than I've already shared. But anywho, let's move on to something a little bit more positive for us here before we go to our bottom of the hour break. Another article from LGBTQnation.com, this one by Matthias Walsh from Friday, January 14th, 2022, under the Life or Lifestyles heading, Bi-Culture Beyond the Cliches and Stereotypes. Bisexual awareness basically here. Defining bisexuality is easy, but bi-culture? That may be harder to distill in a single sentence. Many have tried with listicles on things that are definitely bi-culture, littering the web every Bisexual Awareness Week. Cuffing your jeans? Bi. Finger guns? Also bi. Not being able to sit in a chair properly? Definitely bi. Wearing flannel? Okay, that's more of a lesbian thing, but it's also bi. The bisexual bob? Duh. It's in the name. Wow. Yeah, the things that people think about, right? But this is kind of interesting read here, and I would encourage you to check it out, whether you're bi or whether you're not. But bisexual culture, according to the article, is more than just having an affinity for a bunch of fashion trends and adopting certain mannerisms. big red duh. It also means dealing with both the good and the bad that come with identifying as bisexual. Whether that means asserting your visibility in queer spaces or having barely any bisexual representation on TV, save for the stereotypical toxic bi character that'll most likely get killed off in the end. If you're bi, then you probably know what we're talking about. If you don't, then strap in, the article encourages. Here we attempt to look beyond the random stuff and dig deep into the things that bring bisexual people together. Not going to go into all the details because I would like for you to read this yourself at lgbtqnation.com. Again, I will be posting a link to that on the Facebook page for Lavender Hill. Sorry, got distracted there for a moment with the computer. Being attracted to, well, it's complicated. That's the first thing on the list. Many bisexuals will agree that much of the bisexual experience is about correcting myths and misconceptions about the sexual orientation. And one of the most pervasive myths about bisexuality, its actual definition. Tons of people still believe that bisexuality is defined as being attracted to both men and women. And as such, tons of people still believe that bisexuality is this rigid, binary, and exclusionary sexual identity. But that couldn't be further from the truth. The actual definition of bisexuality, at least the ones the bi activists use, comes from the Bay Area Bisexual Network's 1990 Bisexual Manifesto, which states that bisexuals are people who are attracted to people of the same and different genders. That means bisexuals can be attracted to pretty much anyone, man, woman, non-binary, gender fluid, etc., and that our attraction is not a 50-50 split. With that being said, there is a long-running joke in the community about how bisexuals can often be super picky about the men they date while being hopeless around women. Stereotypes. Gotta love them, right? All right, number 2 on the list, facing biphobia and bisexual invisibility. Biphobia goes along with homophobia and transphobia and all that. But it's a little bit harder for some people to understand, let alone define. According to the article, in the hierarchy of the LGBTQ plus community, bisexuals alongside transgender people are unfortunately at the bottom of the barrel. So many of the misconceptions about bisexuality do, in fact, stem from biphobia and bisexual invisibility. This is why we celebrate Bivisibility Day and Bi Awareness Week every year, and why jokes about being actually invisible until that one special day are all over Twitter. But where does bi-invisibility even come from? Some experts argue that bi-erasure, which is the phenomenon of invalidating the legitimacy of bisexuality, happens because many people still hold on to their obsession with the binary. Bisexuality challenges the very idea that sexuality is as cut and dry as being gay or straight. And for some people, the idea of being more than 100% straight can be too much to bear. Make with that what you will. Again, I'm not going to be reading everything in this article for you. Number 3 on the list is dealing with the consequences of bi-erasure. Since we just talked about that, might as well go into a little detail. There is a pervasive myth in the LGBTQ plus community that bisexuals have something called bisexual privilege, which implies that by being able to blend in with straight people and having the capacity to enter heterosexual relationships, bi people have some kind of privilege over lesbians and gay men. But writer Tony Stenger perfectly dispels this myth by asking, how come it's called bi privilege for us, but for gay men and lesbians it's rightfully called being in the closet? Think about that one. Using humor as a coping mechanism, well, we all tend to do that no matter what our sexual orientation or gender identity. So I'll leave that one be for you for now. And having an amazing community to rely on is number 5 on the list. Finally, biculture is about having that amazing community of like-minded folks who share the pain, the struggle, and awkwardness of being bisexual in a world that doesn't quite know what to do with them. And thanks to the internet, the bi community is there 24/7, even beyond Bi Awareness Week and Bi Visibility Day. So the bottom line, according to this article, is there is no way to be There is no one way, to be bisexual, but there is a myriad of experiences and challenges that all bisexuals can relate to, at least on some level. Biculture is the amalgamation of all these experiences and the ways in which we cope and deal with them. For all the bi people who are feeling lost and alone, don't give up. There is a community of other bisexuals out there who commiserate with you as you face all the ups and downs that come with being bi. If you're in the Lincoln area, why don't you reach out to Out Nebraska? Anywhere in Nebraska, really. Reach out to Out Nebraska. You can find them online at outnebraska.org or on Facebook as well. And I know that there's groups out there associated with Out Nebraska that are there for you, no matter what part of the rainbow community you fall into, whether it be the bisexual community, transgender, gay, lesbian, whatever. There's something there for you in Nebraska. So, check out outnebraska.org. Alrighty, well, it is time for me to take my bottom of the hour break, and I'm going to have some music for you as well. So keep on listening here to KZUM, and I'll have a little bit more news coverage for you as well. Little Elton John there with Crocodile Rock. I'm sure you're all familiar with that one as well. Just like I'm sure you thought you weren't going to hear this moniker anytime soon, Pharma Bro. Yes, Martin Shkreli is back in the news after being convicted in 2018 of essentially fraud. He's back in the news, at least on BBC News, CNN, and other major outlets. He has been ordered to repay $64 million. Yes. Martin Shkreli, the former drug firm executive who ordered dramatic price hikes of a life-saving medicine, has been barred from the industry for life as part of this decision that was made on Friday by Judge Denise Cote, who ordered him to repay $64 million in profits he made from the scheme. She ruled that Mr. Shkreli's actions had violated laws against monopolies. Mr. Shkreli is currently serving a prison sentence for defrauding investors, but this decision is about action he took in 2015, which you may recall Corwin and I talking about, to raise the price of Daraprim, a long-established medicine used to treat toxoplasmosis, from $13.50 to $750, around a 4,000% increase overnight. He also designed supply agreements to block competitors from offering a generic version of the unpatented medicine, which is used to treat the parasitic disease in pregnant women and patients with AIDS. The moves were unpopular and earned him the nickname Pharma Bro. 7 states and the Federal Trade Commission brought a lawsuit over the conduct in 2020, saying he had violated state and federal laws that ban anti-competitive conduct. In her opinion, U.S. District Judge Cote called Mr. Shkreli the prime mover in the scheme. Pardon me. It was his brainchild, and he drove it each step of the way, she wrote. Viera Pharmaceuticals, which Mr. Shkreli founded and was previously known as Turing Pharmaceuticals, earlier agreed to pay $40 million. New York Attorney General Letitia James, one of the officials who brought the suit, celebrated the decision. She said Mr. Shkreli and his partner had illegally raised the price of a life-saving drug as Americans' lives hung in the balance. But Americans can rest easy because Martin Shkreli is a pharma bro no more. Again, he's been banned from participating in the pharmaceuticals industry for the rest of his life. So, yeah, pharma bro no more, I suppose you could say. There's already a link to that article on the Facebook page for Lavender Hill. You can follow up with some of the embedded links that have a little bit more information if you're curious to read up on the history of Mr. Shkreli and his audacious actions. Alrighty, well, before I just, go into music for the rest of the show, I got a little bit of sports news for you. Yeah, every once in a while, as you know, I will cover sports. Carl Nassib has become the first out player to participate in an NFL postseason game. The Raiders have Nassib active for the game yesterday against the Bengals. Another first for an out player in the NFL as they fought for a chance to play in the Super Bowl. Las Vegas Raiders defense end Carl Nassib was active Saturday in the wild card playoff game against the Cincinnati Bengals, making him the first NFL player to participate in a playoff game after coming out, and the first out player on an active NFL playoff game roster. The Raiders took on the Bengals yesterday at Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati, and that was aired on NBC and was streaming via Peacock. Nassib's ability to play wasn't guaranteed, especially following his time in COVID-19 protocols. However, he did not appear on the Raiders' injury report at all during the week and participated fully in practice. He was not on the inactives list released by the NFL teams 90 minutes before the game began. So, yeah, check the article. If you're a sports fan, football fan, you already know what the outcome was of that. I obviously don't, or I would have said. But, yeah, I do try to cover a little bit of sports news for you because, well, there are LGBTQIA individuals involved in amateur, school level, and professional sports, and we can't leave them out of what we talk about here on Lavender Hill. If there is something you would like to hear me talk about in particular on Lavender Hill, you can email me at lavenderhill89.3@gmail.com, and I will get that almost immediately so that I can look it over and see if it can be included in an upcoming show, just as well as you can catch the page on Facebook, message me through that. If you got music you would like for me to hear, if you're an independent artist or are aware of an LGBTQIA Two-Spirit Soji individual that you would, or band or whatever that you would like to hear on the show, you can send that also to lavenderhill89.3@gmail.com or music@kzum.org. Or if you'd like to send in physical items, you can mail those to KZUM, Lavender Hill, at 3534 South 48th Street, Suite 6 here in Lincoln, Nebraska, 68506. May take a little bit to get to me, but it will arrive on the counter here for me within a couple of weeks of its arrival in the studio suites here. So make sure that you put Lavender Hill on there so that they know who to give it to. Anywho, let's go ahead and get into music for the rest of the show. I will pipe in at least once before that's over and done with. But, there's a lot more news I could cover, but I really couldn't decide what to cover. So I figured music. Little David Bowie for you here with I'm Afraid of Americans. Because even though we've got the Biden-Harris administration, things are not all roses anywhere in the U.S., to be honest. Alrighty, a little share there for you with If I Could Turn Back Time. That was a live recording, of course, and I hope you did enjoy that. Before I send you out with our final song, want to let you know what's coming up next on the Women's Show starting at noon today. Twyla Twang will be interviewing singer-songwriter Dory Freeman about her most recent album, and then she's going to be sharing some of her favorite new music on the monthly series Chick Chat with Deb Anderson on the Women's Show. So, stay tuned for that. There's going to be some fun involved. And, we're getting closer and closer to the studio phone system being fixed. So when that happens, we'll have more than just these occasional interviews for you on the Women's Show as well as on Lavender Hill and other great programming here on KZUM. So I invite you all to stay tuned for that. Again, thank you, everyone, for your good thoughts, your prayers, your positive vibes, and good juju, whatever it was that you were sending my way over the last couple of weeks. I am feeling much better, probably better than I have in years, to be perfectly honest. But it's no easy thing to recover from a surgery, no matter how simple and routine it may have been. And it was far from simple and routine with me, but I'm not going to go into the details. Twyla's like, oh, please, don't do that on the air. But yeah. So thank you all for your thoughts and prayers there. They do make a difference, at least in my mind. So, I want to thank you again for tuning in to Lavender Hill. Check out the Facebook page for those article links. I'll be posting those later this afternoon so that you can follow up on that and find out more on your own. And I'll be back next week with some more live coverage and some great music for you. And who knows, I might even have an interview lined up sometime in the very near future. I'm not going to wait for the phone system to get fixed. I'll use Zoom or something like that so I can make sure I can get you some great stuff. You're not supposed to throw things, Twyla. She's throwing her coffee around, I think. That's sacrilege. That's caffeine abuse.
It did not spill.
Okay, it didn't spill. That's good. It was in the studio, so I'm really glad it didn't spill. But anywho, I'm going to go ahead and send you out with some music from Summer Osborne. We are going to hear from her. Human Side is what the song is from her album As I Am. Keep on listening here to KZUM. I'll be back next week.